Since episode 9 dropped, fans have been discovering new details every single day, and some of them completely change everything. For example, why Pomni started learning piano in the finale, what was actually hidden behind the 2 locked doors inside Jax's mind, and most importantly, what if abstraction isn't really the end? Today we're breaking down the biggest hidden details and mysteries from episode 9. Let's start with a detail many people missed. At the end of the episode, we see Pomni playing softball, and that's strange, because earlier she said she wasn't really into sports, but now she's playing, and she's doing it for Ragatha. Then in the credits, we see another scene. Pomni is sitting at a piano, trying to learn how to play, and clearly she's struggling, but she keeps going, and this is where it gets interesting. Earlier, Jax mentioned that he only knows how to play a couple songs on piano, and if you connect those details together, a very interesting picture starts to form. Pomni may actually be learning piano for Jax. And if that's true, then the finale revealed something very important. Pomni finally stopped thinking only about escape. Now she genuinely cares about others. Gooseworks foreshadowed Jax's story. Now this might be one of the craziest details from episode 9. It turns out Gooseworks may have hinted at Jax's past long before the finale. A while ago she posted a strange video. In it, she was lying in an alley, and the caption said, "Sleeping in an alley." At the time, almost everyone thought it was just a joke, but after episode 9, that post suddenly felt very different, because fans noticed something strange. That exact footage was used in the finale, for the scene showing Jax before the circus. And if this wasn't a coincidence, then Gooseworks literally foreshadowed part of Jax's backstory long before episode 9 released. After the finale, Gooseworks revealed even more details, including the real names of Ribbit and Kaufmo. Kaufmo's real name was Doug, and Ribbit's was Leah. And here's the interesting part. Gooseworks previously said that Jax likes being called Lee. Lee and Leah, only one letter apart. For 2 characters who were this close, that feels like a very intentional detail. Remember the bowling ball? At first it felt like just a random object, but now we know it wasn't. It appears far too often. We've seen it in Ribbit's room, in Kaufmo's room, and in other important scenes. After episode 9, its meaning changes completely. Now it's clear the bowling ball was always symbolic, a symbol of Jax's pain, his trauma, and his guilt. Now let's talk about a few smaller details. In the credits, there's a scene where Ragatha walks through the hallway, and when she passes Zubal's room, there are hearts floating around the door. But here's what's more interesting. Gangel's room right next to it is open and empty, which suggests Gangel is inside with Zubal. And it looks like episode 9 may have already hinted at their connection. There are also a couple more details. For example, Ribbit's eyes are shaped like lily pads, a tiny detail. But Gooseworks thought about even that. And one more interesting detail. The cover of Isn't She Lovely playing in the finale was performed by Jabi, the same person who voiced one of the side characters. And this brings us to one of the biggest ideas in the finale. A lot of people still see abstraction as death, but maybe, that's not true. Kane's voice actor said something very important. Abstraction isn't death. It's more like losing yourself, a mental spiral, a complete collapse of identity. And if you think about it, that changes everything. Because if abstraction isn't truly the end, then one huge question appears. Can abstracted characters come back? Because at the end, they don't look dead. They look lost. But the biggest mystery in episode 9 wasn't hidden in the background. It was hidden inside Jax's mind, the 2 locked doors. And now we get to the biggest mystery of episode 9. When Pomni entered Jax's mind, she started opening doors, and each door showed different memories, different scenarios, different versions of Jax. But the most interesting part was something else. Out of all those doors, 2 remained locked, and that clearly wasn't random. Gooseworks specifically made sure we noticed them, which leaves one obvious question. What exactly was Jax hiding? Let's start with the first door. If you look closely at the first hallway, there's a pattern. Almost every door there shows an abstraction scenario. We saw Jax's reaction to what would happen if these characters abstracted. Ragatha, Zubal, Gangel. And that leaves an interesting detail. If those really were abstraction scenarios, then only 2 characters remain, Pomni and Kinger. But Kinger doesn't really fit. Jax barely interacts with him. And more importantly, Kinger has already been through too much. He witnessed Queenie's abstraction. He watched others disappear. And somehow, he's still holding on. Yes, he's strange, but surprisingly stable, which makes one thing very likely. The first locked door wasn't about Kinger, it was about Pomni. And this is where things get interesting. Think back to episode 6. Pomni asks Jax, what would happen if I abstracted? And Jax responds coldly, saying he'd just move on and forget about her. But now we know something. That was almost certainly a lie. Because episode 9 revealed one major truth. Jax always pushes away the people who matter most to him. That happened with Ribbit. And it was slowly starting to happen with Pomni too. And if that's true, then Pomni's abstraction could have been Jax's final breaking point. The last straw. The moment that would finally break him. And maybe Pomni? That's exactly what was behind the first locked door. Abstracted Pomni. And right after that, Abstracted Jax. And by the way, if you enjoy deep TADC breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Because now we're getting to the darkest part of this entire video. But if the first door already sounds disturbing, the second one is much worse because it looks completely different. It's separate. More chains, more locks, and there's one important detail. The more locks on that door, the harder Jax tried to forget what was behind it. And that tells us something important. This wasn't just another memory and not another abstraction scenario. Something much deeper was hidden here. And this leads to the most interesting theory. What if the second door was hiding the real Jax, not the version we saw throughout the series, but who he really is deep down, his true emotions, his pain, his trauma, his vulnerability, everything he spent years trying to suppress. Throughout the series, Jax built an image of someone who doesn't care. Cold, cruel, toxic. But the finale showed the opposite. Jax felt far more than he ever showed. And maybe the most tragic part of his story is this. He wasn't only afraid of other people, he was afraid of himself. Afraid of someone seeing who he really was. Weak, broken, vulnerable. And that's exactly why he pushed Ribbit away. And in the end, all these details lead to one conclusion. Jax wasn't afraid of the circus. He wasn't afraid of abstraction. He was afraid of himself, his past, his pain, and the possibility that one day he'd have to face all of it. And maybe that's exactly why his story became the most tragic one in all of Digital Circus. Episode 9 changed everything. Now, one thing is clear. The biggest mystery in Digital Circus was never Cain, never abstraction. It was Jax. But now I want to know what you think. What was really behind that second door?